Hi, my name is Kamil. I'm thrilled to lead today's episode of Disruption Talks with Juan Jose. With with great honor, I want to meet on stage a person who is a very experienced product and innovation manager, who worked all over the place in Germany and for great innovators, for top innovators of the technology stage like Axel Springer, Rocket Internet, finleap, and now he works for Otto Group from Hamburg. Uh, Juan Jose, just like when we connected, you immediately clicked and you said, yes, I want to talk. I want to spread knowledge about how innovation is made, promoted, managed, and so on and so on. For which I'm super grateful because the topic is incredibly interesting. Welcome on stage.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I like to share, but I'd like also to learn. That's why I love this kind of formats.
Awesome. So let's jump straight to it because you work as a head of innovation unit, as a head of innovation for a super large group of companies, and this is something that sparked my attention, my interest, which is why I very wanted to talk to you. How to manage innovation, which is so versatile, so ephemeric, but how to manage it in such a vast group of companies and people in a way that it makes sense, but you don't kill the creativity and so on and so on. So let's start with the basics. Like how does the central innovation system work?
Well, to be honest, we had a few tries, right? I think we're still learning, so it's not about necessarily keeping it to a strict format or framework. It's mostly about learning how you can actually impact your work, but also especially impact the people trying to do innovation. So that's why currently the setup that we have is basically based on a, let's say, 4-pillar framework. The first one is all about transparency. So how does it work is we spend a lot of time talking to people. Really, that's basically most of the time that I spend in a week is talking to people from different group companies to actually understand what they are working on. And in most cases, so we are talking about innovation management, but we are talking about a very heterogeneous group. So technological capabilities and innovation mean something different to each one of the people that I'm talking to. So we have a rather broader definition of what innovation means to us intrinsically. So this is the transparency aspect, right? Because there you can actually understand where are problems that we're working parallelly, right? That more than one team is maybe working on. How can we bring them together? And then we come to the second column, which is basically support those initiatives that actually make an impact across the group for more than one company. And from there, you would also take it and say, okay, if it's needed that you do some kind of strategic investment, then you even do your support with budgets. So this is the 3 columns, and let's say the foundation of these 3 columns is innovation culture, which is basically by talking to people, by trying to understand how they work, what they do, is also on the side trying to help them on basically working on the prioritization, working on aligning with business strategy, because this is something you might heard a lot, right? Innovation is super cool. We always work with super cool technology, but at the end of the day, if it's not aligned with the business strategy, then it often just stops being beneficial, and then innovation initiatives just get killed.
Okay, and you mentioned that at one of the stages you have to choose like which initiative, which innovation can fit multiple companies, but of course, understandably, in a group, some companies are similar to each other, have similar business models and so on, but some probably don't. So how do you assess the possible return on investment across multiple companies at the same time quickly, right? Because it's also an issue how to do it fast.
Yeah, totally. But in most cases, so most of the auto companies, we come from a, let's say, very fiscal responsible culture. So in most cases, all initiatives that already exist tend to have a business case for their own, right? So what we actually do is to bring them all to a, but let's say, bigger scale, to make it transparent also to board members, to management, to make the decision upon where to invest further. And it is at the Generation Group. We have logistics, we have payments separately. So all of those companies will have their own necessities, right, that we cannot cover on a broader scale. But the majority of the business are quite close to each other from a business model. So it is not that difficult to assess that. What is actually difficult is to cope with the different technical capabilities, because you have companies like my dear colleagues from Otto that work on Otto.de. They have big tech teams, right? And there are other companies that they don't have that many tech people in place, so they need support in that. So we tend to extend ourselves by basically getting external support, or somehow basically making one company build a solution also for the rest if it's needed. But in most cases also is the collaboration with startups and basically opening the door to rather buy than build is something that we also use specifically for those cases, because that tends to give you the speed to learn, to actually basically calculate a proper return on invest afterwards.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it. It's interesting. But now I'm thinking, we talked before, so I kind of know, the area that you are dealing with, but maybe to anchor ourselves and to also help our audience understand what do we mean when we say innovation applied in Otto Group. Could you share some examples of like innovative initiatives, projects, investments that were made and you are proud of? You can share.
Yeah, sure. I mean, generative AI is all over the place right now. So since we talked, a lot of things have happened in that sense. However, I'm gonna save maybe for later. So one of the things that we are working on is computer generated imagery. It's something that already exists. Somewhere, but the overall situation is that we have furniture for some things. There is furniture that you can basically easily create images on your computer, right? So if you imagine you're going to sell a new kitchen, and you're selling this kitchen, and it has different colors. If you have to build this kitchen every now and then to take the pictures, that takes a huge effort. So you can calculate those costs. But for fashion, it's different, right? Because in fashion, you don't have like an immobile object. Fashion, if you want to give a customer a clear feeling of what it is, how you wear it, how it fits and everything, that gets harder. And that was one of the projects that we started last year to try to assess the capabilities of building imagery that is good enough to generate content, and also do we have the data for it, right? Because you can imagine if you're having supply chains, you have of course partners that are super digitalized, but you have also partners that don't necessarily do. And so this project is evidently for everyone has the same relevancy, right? Because the moment you start having product information that helps you generate 3D imagery, you can use it for any type of future content interaction that you have with the customers, right? So the availability of data in that sense is essential for us, and that was the big break, and that's why we basically focus on that. That is one of the things that we did last year.
Cool. Thanks. It's really I think it helps to put things in perspective. But I'll circle back slightly to one of the first things you said. You said about innovation culture as a cornerstone for having a strong innovative engine across the companies. Could you expand a bit more about what is innovation culture for you, and how do you personally influence it across the companies?
I mean, so what I'm doing here with you, I also tend to do across the Otto Group a lot, and it's basically you have. So I'm going to turn it back to, the time. I used to work in startups a lot in Berlin when I was living there for a long time, and I had like this more arrogant view on incumbents and corporates, right? I thought, hey, come on, it's so clear that you should change things. It's so clear, right? And I was never fully aware what it actually meant until I started working here. And then I realized we have so much talent in this company and so many people that are limited by technical legacy, right? Tech legacy, tech debt, that limits the basically your capability to innovate and to test and to learn, because the effort is super high to get, let's say, this much of learning. So what I started to try to do is basically, first of all, try to identify those persons that maybe think alike, right? That want to change things, that are fully aware that things cannot continue the way they are, and that we need to be more open to innovation and also more open to change, because disruptors come from every side and will change the way customers consume, the way you interact with customers. So that are willing to learn, and those you use as a multiplier, right? So the job there is also by talking to a lot of people, trying to find those pirates, I call them. There is this book from Tendai Viki that is called Pirates in the Navy. I think we spoke about it last time. And basically, this idea of having pirates in a very structured setup like the Navy is very evident. And you need the Navy to have impact, because we are all in that together. So that's how it starts. And the second thing is that the moment you start using this transparency effort to make every innovation activity visible to everyone, then people tend to connect to each other, and they don't need me necessarily to do the job for that. And that also drives a different dynamic into how they work, because that's essential to learn, right? So if you are listening to somebody, how they approach solving a problem, you compare yourself, you try to understand why that might be different, and that brings you basically closer to this idea that you're able to build a product that you can move fast to change, right? That the capabilities to change and the ability to change technologically is not as painful as it is today, or as it has been in the past.
But from what you say, but also from my experience, I know that one factor is the ability to create a product, to create technology that can support the change in people's behavior. But then, the second big factor is actually changing people's behavior. Right? Innovation is mostly about that, and old habits die hard, and some people tend to stick to their proven older methods for longer than others. Is there any specific framework approach you use to help people embrace the novelty, because that's all it's all about, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, so when I joined the Otto Group, we used to have a company builder. So it was, let's say, a different version of innovation, trying to create new business models and new companies from within. But of course, what we try to do there a lot is to open up for people to tell us about their business ideas. In most cases, you had people coming with a specific problem, and what I try to help them with is to guide them through a process, let's say as simple as the business model canvas, right? That you sit down for 2 hours with somebody and guide them through filling this out, and trying to make them understand why this might be a relevant problem to solve, or why it's not. Right? In most cases, it's not, because it's very personal. It's very about what you're doing on a daily basis, and it might not be scalable or necessary to scale it up. But just investing the time into listening and to respecting their idea and to helping them to use methods to try to figure it out, that already does a lot, even though you're disappointing them because you're not going to pursue that. On the other hand, sometimes things happen that help you with transformation, as ugly as it sounds. So Otto Group had the huge luck, I would say, that we introduced Teams a few months before the first lockdown, Corona, right?
Okay.
So reluctancy that was in the beginning, we had an ambassador program, we had a lot of things there in place to basically help people to move to this, right? To document everything, to use SharePoint, to work together on documents and those things. And Corona helped us to actually see the immediate benefit of having it. And I see with productivity tools, when it comes to Gen AI right now, I see a similar potential, that if you involve everyone in using tools, internal tools for personal efficiency, then people will understand better. Because whenever it's classical incentivization, right? Whenever I explain to you something, the moment you really understand that it's beneficial to you, and the gap between me explaining you and you realizing that benefit is close to each other, then it's a good case, right? And that on a broader scale, because everything else, it takes time, and there are people that you might not be able to reach. But another key factor, I told you I was a bit arrogant before I joined the Otto Group in regards to corporates, and being humble is really essential in that sense, right? Because I've worked in digital companies my whole life, and I cannot imagine having worked somewhere else, and I cannot imagine my colleagues that work with me that were already working for the group when there was a catalog that needed to be printed, and everyone involved in the printing process, in the printers, all of those people actually doing real work, right? I'm just sitting here typing on my computer the whole time. Be humble about that, right? And try to learn from them. I think that also opens the door for them to be able to listen to you more than the opposite, than coming into questioning everything that they do, that they should change the way they think, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think I was just met with a comment earlier this week when someone said, you people from IT are so arrogant. You always think you can solve every problem with a mobile app, right? And that's absolutely a case where you lose connection with the end users, the people that you're building services for. But you mentioned internal AI tools as one vehicle, let's say, of empowering your team and somehow pushing your team towards using more and more innovative tools. And there's a question from Hubert on our chat about just that. What areas of internal processes and operations of retail corporation are worth improving with AI today?
I mean, it really depends on the corporation and where you have a lot of workforce sitting there. But you can just simply think of service desk as one first thing, right? So depending on the size of the company and depending on the type of employees that you have, I know a lot of companies where employees are really reluctant to writing Jira tickets if they have some problem with the tools they're working, right? So what they need is actually take the phone and call somebody and tell them, I click, it doesn't work, right? And so the Gen AI tools help you, at least to some extent, to replicate that. Of course, you need a lot of data, a lot of tickets to basically make a machine actually work properly. But I think that can make also somebody be more open, for example, to AI in general, if they are a bit reluctant or rather critical about it, because also there, a machine will probably help you way faster than a customer support manager until you reach basically a level where somebody can just do some magic and do it, right? So there also the experience of actually getting something solved faster will help you to accept that technology. But I think those are the things that the productivity tools that can help you. Knowledge bases, so every time you have huge change processes in big companies with something changing, I don't know, new HR tool, whatever it is. We all know these websites that have a little chatbot thingy there. Most of the times it's not that like complicated and such, but if you have vast information about HR processes and everything, to operate that automatically with chatbots will help you a lot. That's, I think, where you can enter. Everything else, so if you think of controlling, finance, and all of that, I think that really depends on the company, on the culture. There are a lot of things that are already automated, I think, to some extent in some places. But if I want to access data and do some nice charts and all of that, for me personally, that's so as a innovation manager on a holding level, I do a lot of PowerPoint. Whatever helps me do nicer PowerPoint slides would also be welcomed.
True. So I have to ask you, because the AI, generative AI hype started somewhere more or less a year ago, and we have seen it go like up and down and into some bumps. One of those bumps were data and privacy leaks from major corporations. and following ban of using some tools across the corporation. So on the scale, 0 to 100, I know you're not on 0. I feel like you wouldn't ban usage of those tools in your team, but what's your point? Like where to put the limit? Open the gates and allow everyone to type in everything into any bot they don't know where their mind is? No.
I think so. You have there, let's say, a two-sided problem. First of all, you have people that are so eager to test and learn things that you highly likely cannot control whatever they put in an external tool, right? So all of those pioneers, the first movers,
pirates,
they will probably do it. And I mean, I would assume that because of their love for experimentation, they might be hopefully a bit conscious about what they are actually doing, right? But then you have the other side of people that are either afraid of it because they don't understand the technology, or they are afraid of it that they might enter something there that is basically illegal or has some type of legal consequence. So as companies, and this is something we started doing very early at Otto Group, is try to educate people, right? To generate guidelines on how to use external tools properly in let's say compliant ways for the company, and to spread them around and to help people to basically lose that fear of doing things that might have legal consequences, so that they feel safe also in experimenting, right? And then because when they start experimenting, they will also lose the, it's my hypothesis, you will lose the fear for the technology. The second instance is, because you cannot be as fast in some cases, right? Is to try to generate your own instance of let's say GPT or whatever other model you're using, in order to have a safe space where you can actually do that. Because if we're talking about productivity, right, the productivity comes in when I am able to use company data to simplify my workload. And that is a big milestone, I think, that companies that have the ability to, and of course, right, so even OpenAI, whoever it is, they're gonna build those things for enterprise customers, because every enterprise customer is asking for exactly that. So I don't have a question that it will be possible, but you should create those safe spaces for that as a company.
Okay, sure, thanks. I would put a small pause on generative AI topic, if you don't mind. But you also wanted to, okay, and because I wanted to circle back to more of a, I don't know, the core somehow of your work, because when we talked before, we talked about sourcing innovation into large group, and there are multiple ways to do so, right? You mentioned building in-house in a way of a venture building, I guess, in a way of spinning off new companies, new startups that serve and support other companies in the group. But also you can probably go into more than just build or buy dilemma. And here's where I know you're an expert on. I would love to dig into that. What is possible and what is working for you and what's working for other companies?
Also, that is completely dependent on the culture of each company, right? So I can tell you that the Otto Group was very early on one of the first investor of Project A, right? Already a lot of years ago as a limited partner. So it's basically corporate venturing, but without having a strategic approach on trying to also influence where do you invest, right? So that is left up to Project A. They are the experts in that, or Headline or Event we're working with. They do that. But of course, you also trust that they know the market. So they're going to be investing in startups that might help us also solve problems, right? So part of the job is also trying to get transparency on that, trying to involve people, bringing people together to inspire each other, to maybe find solutions. That is one aspect. Company building itself, I think it's very difficult for big companies to try to find those unicorns, because that's always the expectation, right? So at Otto, we had a very successful spin-off with About You, and but About You basically goes, let's say, in a different dimension. It happened in a way that is not necessarily what you would expect from Otto Group in general. That's why also I think that also what fueled their success, because they were able to run with a lot of support very independently from the group. So they were able also to build a lot of stuff from scratch. But when you have an internal company builder, you tend to want to have those successes, but you also tend to want to solve the problems that you cannot solve with your own teams, right? To get rid of legacy, to speed up things. And that is also not necessarily working, because I was not part of the company in the beginning when I started there, right? So it took me a long time to try to talk to experts, to try to understand things. And they were looking at me like, who are you? You're sitting in the Hamburg city center in a nice office. Who are you? What do you want, right? So that was not necessarily helpful also for the culture. Then you have something like venture clienting, which is what we did afterwards, that I think is super good on a certain stage where you want to solve problems that are very acute in your own transformation and change. Need speed, but you need to have teams that can speak both languages like really good. Corporates that are able to talk to corporates, to the experts, to the teams there, properly respect them, and bring the startups and motivate those startups also to becoming your service provider, so to say, for a certain solution for a big corporate, so that they find a common ground on which to test things. So that I think is essential, the people in there that you have to make it work. And for us, currently, that is a model that is working quite good, so to say, right? So we are able to question ourselves, and we come from a very strong build culture, right? So German engineers, they do everything super good, and that has worked for a long time. But sometimes speed is also necessary, so therefore they are more open to do that. And that's why company building itself, I think it's the biggest problem is that the moment you need to scale, you need to compete against the VC market. And that is, if you want to keep it, let's say 100% entity from your organization, then it's going to get hard, because if it's a model that is viable financing, then others will finance it for sure, and probably with bigger buckets.
Yeah, we talked about this. I was wondering, after we talked, you said exactly this sentence. I was wondering, is it still possible for a group of college graduates to found a startup that will really put a dent and really disrupt something bigger, really disrupt maybe not even the whole industry, but a certain market, or or just unsubtle as a certain biggest player in the niche, right?
It gets way more difficult, right? So of course we don't have the situation we had 15 years ago, because also I remember when I was having these kind of talks like 10 years ago, we always focus on the capabilities of not having to have service on premise and all of that to be fast, right? To move fast, to have cloud services and all of that. But now corporates, to some extent, some more than others, have moved also all their applications, or almost completely their applications, to cloud services, right? So they would benefit from that too, and they have bigger capabilities, I would say, when it comes to money like that. However, what I would say is that always that what you can always focus on is where legacy is still very deep ingrained in the technical capabilities of corporates. That's where college graduates still will be able to disrupt, because they can leverage everything that is already available, and probably knowledge to some extent that is also easier accessible, to basically in value chains just basically take one chunk off that. And I'd say that that's actually pretty good, because I believe in end-to-end value for the customer, but also believe that you as a company should focus on what you're actually really good at doing. And if there are parts that you just have as part of your business because you need it to deliver value to your customers, you might also use those disruptors to make a better work, or to deliver more value or better value.
Okay. But isn't this isn't there kind of an internal conflict that on the one hand, as a startup, you want those enterprises to be your clients, and maybe you have some challenging technology that can help them, but then as a corporate, as an enterprise, there's this saying, nobody was ever fired for hiring IBM, right? But I guess people were hired for hiring startups that failed to deliver what they promised. So isn't this conundrum that enterprise is reluctant to hire startups for their key legacy processes without a proper overview, without proper trust, and so on. At the same time, startups struggle to find and weasel their way into corporates. But I guess we talked a bit about this venture clienting trying to solve this problem in a way, right? Because you review multiple startups, you review multiple ideas.
I think so. One of the aspects there that you also need to understand. So when I used to work in startups, I always thought as enterprise as the worst customers that you could have, but because they're going to break you, right? They want to have a level of customization on your product that doesn't make it viable then to the market. However, when you think about venture clienting, especially in areas, let's take for example what we've done in the past with packaging. If you think of packaging, basically what a startup would need is a partner that has to send a lot of parcels to, let's say, test new materials, right? So if you have a new materials to package and they go through some automatic process in a warehouse and so, do they break? What happens, right? And normally you cannot replicate that in a cheap way when you're basically developing your product. So that's where venture clienting can also help you, because you as a company have also then, let's say, an entrepreneurial responsibility to support these startups that are thinking outside the box to deliver a new solution that is more sustainable, that could be the future, and you allow them to use your capabilities to actually develop the product further. So I think that is actually a win-win, because what I know from us is like in a let's say in a theory of ambidexterity, you would be exploiting the core business and you would not be develop the new super sustainable packaging system with the costs that you have to handle on a daily basis to deliver a product, right? So if you're able to bridge that by using their knowledge, technical and let's say production knowledge to do that, that can help you. So you're right? It's always a difficult thing. If they fail, then you basically put a bet on something that is not going to help you at some point. But that is also entrepreneurial risk, and that is something that I think in German culture there is still room to grow when it comes to accept entrepreneurial risk in that sense.
Okay, cool. So my next question would be, how do you, because I talked with several people who are maybe leading innovation or sourcing innovation. There's a number of ways to do it, and some companies they just open up like a contest and they say, so whoever comes with idea, we will review all your ideas. But this floods them with lots of ideas, opens probably new locks in their head, right, about some problems, ideas they haven't thought about before. Other companies approach it differently, so they put a problem on the market and they say, whoever can find the most innovative, best solution to this problem that we already understand, see, and measured will win the deal. How do you approach this topic? Like either of those two, and a mix?
You mean idea generation in general, or?
So in venture clienting, in the end, what it comes to is there's someone with an idea and someone with a problem, and
sure.
Ideas come first or problems come first?
So in most cases, so what we do with venture clienting, and it's also that what we do in innovation management on a holding level, is that we focus on strategic, let's say, goals that we have, right? And if you take those strategic goals, you can basically, if you look at it from a customer perspective, there are certain, let's say, service levels or at least features that you want to be identified for by the customer, things that you think that are basically a market standard that you need to be delivering to your customer, because to at least be on par with market leaders, depending on the sector that you're looking at. So from those strategic goals, that's where you can actually start thinking, okay, what are the capabilities that we need to fulfill this? And if you have your list of capabilities, then you know, okay, these capabilities I am able to develop by myself, probably as a low-hanging fruit, because I don't know, everything is there and it just needs 1-2 things. Or you start trying to basically do the analysis on the startup scene to understand where can you basically get somebody in to actually solve that specific thing for you that helps you deliver that. So if you think of size recommendations, right? I think size recommendations is something very critical for customers to reduce returns and all of that. So there, it makes total sense to bring externals in, right? Because there are people that are just doing exactly that the whole time. And for us, it's one part in a product detail page where you have a lot of other stuff going on.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. I get it. So it's just rephrase. So first there comes a need that comes from strategic decisions. Where do you want to steer the big ship? Then someone can help if they feel like they fit a specific niche idea. Just out of curiosity, what were the most, you remember the most surprising idea for a solution that someone pitched to you over last years? So you had some well-described problem, you maybe had an idea how it can be solved, and then someone came and disrupted your mind all over with something absolutely novel.
I mean, that has been really some years ago, right? So when I joined finleap, and I started working for an insurtech, my first understanding of what we were trying to do there was basically trying to develop a B2B platform for insurances, right? So the hypothesis was you have incumbent insurances that have super legacy system, dark processes that cannot touch, that nobody can get a hold of. So you just basically use the brand on one side and basically build a complete separate platform to deliver the service of an insurance outside their system, and you just use the brand for it, right? So that for me was like a white labeling thing, clearly understood. But what basically the team originally was thinking, and what we were basically walking towards as a vision, but first you needed customers, right? So in some cases you have some vision, and you know that's where it's going to go, but you need to get money to get there. And for that, you need to build a product that you can actually deliver today or tomorrow, but not wait until the next 10 years. But it's actually making insurances completely custom made, right? So I don't know. So you normally you have an insurance, let's say a classical German insurance, Hausratversicherung for your place, basically for everything that is in your apartment or house. And you're paying a lot of premiums for things that might never be relevant to you because of how you live, what you have. Maybe I have
it's
super
not personalized enough.
Yeah. So maybe you have art. I have a lot of tech, expensive tech. So there is a lot of things that are different.
Sure.
And normally, it's not efficient, right, to actually be able to ensure that one specific thing, because then the probability that something happens is higher. So the premiums will be super expensive, and then you don't necessarily have a business. You wouldn't be selling insurance. So you basically allocate the risks through everything that you're insuring, because there are a lot of things that are insured that have a zero probability, and you basically finance whatever happens then. But it's all about price calculation, right, at the end of the day, and being able to develop a price that in time, taking into account what happens, how many damages you have over time, what you would actually be needing as a capital to cover that. And that was basically what the team in parallel was working on, to try to develop this basically completely customized insurance where you can choose every single thing that you want to insure independently from each other, and not calling it Hausrat or Haftpflicht, which is the German liability, or home insurance. So you do all of that. That was for me back then, because I had no clue about insurance. I thought that was merely impossible, right? From what I studied in university, I thought it was never possible. And that's where we're going to. right? Because the idea of basically understanding damages immediately, there was this insurance lemonade that you basically took a picture of whatever happened, and then you got the money like in 30 seconds. That I understood that could happen. But this other part, which is a very manual process, right? So you have insurances that tens of thousands of people calculating all of these sheets, making these terms, making all of that. To do that smart and automated is something that surprised me back then. Now it makes total sense, right? So
yeah, it's a very cool idea, because also it touches something interesting, that a lot of innovation, a lot of breakthrough innovation that we are experiencing every day is somehow hidden in the back office, is hidden in on the back end, right? We of course we see new mobile apps, new social services, and so on and so on, but vast majority of what happens is within the API. So a different question, well, a different angle on the same question, I guess. what's the idea that you're already bored of and that you are pitched all over again, and it's not fitting the needs, but people are still believing that it's a gold, it's a holy grail of solving all the problems?
Yeah, I don't think it's an idea. It's more like the need of calling something or using a technology. So today everything is AI, right?
Yeah,
Even
a
if it's
year ago
just
everything was
was
Web3 was 2 years
metaverse.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but a blockchain is for me something that I cannot hear anymore, especially in a corporate context, because most of the times what everyone was pitching us was something that was based on blockchain, and you could say, okay, is there another substitutive technology that you could use? Yes, but it's not as cool as blockchain, And basically, the problem is that you lose actually the benefit of that technology for a certain purpose where it works actually pretty good and way better than anything else. You lose that perspective, and you start basically having it up to here of hearing that. That is one thing. The second thing, this is also very related to the job that I'm doing today, is basically people wanting to have the digital wardrobe. So trying to categorize everything that you already own and bought in a physical space, so not online, to be able to have it digitally somehow, so that whenever you go somewhere or order something, you get basically, hey, you already have this, that could fit that could fit there, and that doesn't fit at all. I think from an idea perspective is, yeah, of course, it's like the dreamland, right? So you would have a
Yeah.
virtual wardrobe, and you just scroll, and then it's the complete outfit is there. But whenever people pitch me that, I was like, yeah, but are you willing to take a picture of every single item that you have? Because it's not categorized anywhere, right? And especially if you think of t-shirts, right? This t-shirt, okay, it's very evident Otto, but let's say this t-shirt will be completely black. Where did I buy this t-shirt? You wouldn't know, right? And how can a machine learn that
It's me.
without manual input?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
those are the things that I got pitched at a lot of times from people working, that they said, I think it would be great. And then you basically go through the business model canvas, right? And you say, okay, but what actually do you need to make it work? You need to have people that take pictures of everything that you were. Nobody's gonna do that. So until you're able to, some companies now offer you that you can basically scan your receipt of the things that you bought, and they are basically added to your online account, so that you see that purchase also there, and you could theoretically see the items. That is already getting into that direction, right? But those companies needed to basically connect both inventories, online and offline, to some extent, and that took them a lot of time.
Yeah, that's true. And what do you think? What do you say about the wardrobe? I heard about the fridge, some time ago, that it's so easy now to make pictures of everything you have in your fridge and your cupboards and in your kitchen, and we can tell you what can you cook from that, and that's all nice. But first of all, I don't want to take pictures, and second of all, I'm not homo economicus. I'm not always willing to take recommendation from someone. I sometimes just want to cook as I go. And it's like very innovative process, very like creative process. I guess it also happens to be with shopping and clothing, and something that I hear in technology world too often is that technology can solve problems that are very rational, but people are not. And now, of course, with large models, we can understand those nuances and somehow map out how unlogical people are and behave, and large models can reflect that. But I wonder to which extent. But of course, as you mentioned, it comes with a huge effort to feed the model with enough information, data, and raw material for the model to perform. Which maybe brings, which may bring us to like another area of topics, data. We talked before, you mentioned like you hear about data as a foundation of business decisions for probably as long as you work. I do the same, but still I happen to stumble upon companies and clients that have a total mess underneath, and they don't really understand what data they collect, how they store it. Various data warehouses don't talk to each other in the backend, and so on and so on. So is this, the question is, of course, how important it is for innovation office and innovation management in a group of 30-something brands to have access to commonly shared data. And is there any great way to do it? Do you feel like you hit the gold mine and Otto Group is doing this well?
Yes.
And you can
I haven't found the perfect process for it. So as Otto Group, we started very early into trying to basically at least have some kind of connection to each other so that we are able to track similar things. However, as you said, right, the group is heterogeneous. Some companies were founded inside the group, others were purchased. So you have different tech landscape. It's very expensive to try to consolidate everything, and might not always be necessary, to be honest. However, in that sense, I think that you have, as a business leader, or if you are a managing director of one of those companies, you have, of course, a responsibility of keeping the business running, right? And basically through going all of the ways that you have economically. And that is always like the first priority. And sometimes in that first priority, data gets lost along the way. And what I mean by that is that basically it gets deprioritized, right? So to all that homework that you actually know that you need to take care of, to consolidate, to break off silos, to have some kind of maybe, so whatever buzzword there is, if it's data lake or mesh or whatever it is, to actually try to develop that is also very expensive, and it gets deprioritized a lot. But what most of the times helps, and sometimes it's too late for that, but my experience is like the moment you start seeing that all of those Gen AI fantasies that you have as a leader and think, okay, this is going to solve a lot of problems that I have that I don't know how to solve, you're going to see that whatever garbage you bring in, garbage will come out the other side, right? So that will change the priority on that. And that is also my big bet in general. We are, let's say, at Otto, we are at a better place today than we were a long time ago, but there are still areas in the business that are not fully digitalized, because in the supply chain, you're working with, 100 plus partners, and it's also very difficult, right? You need the product, you need your inventory, and you need to also adapt to the partner however they are working, right? And some of the partnerships are long-standing for decades, so you're not going to break them just because they keep on using fax. But at some point it will happen, right? It is inevitable, I think. And
or you are forced to somehow build a middleware, right? A translator, and like somehow getting everything to the same denominator. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that Gen AI will help you to also solve that in a let's say more efficient way, and in a way that basically also forces people to accept it, that needs to be changed. However, but one of the hypotheses that I had some years ago was we need to focus on the digital supply chain trend. I was really running after it. I thought it is very necessary for end-to-end value transparency to understand where do we have blockages, where do we have this, right? So from my hypothesis perspective, it's super good. But however, I was this week I was at an event where somebody was trying to describe it as a type of maturity model, right? And if you think of let's say AI acceptance and AI usage in your own value chain, then the digital twin is basically at the end of that journey, because Gen AI will help you to overcome all of those. Again, a hypothesis, sure, but will help you overcome all of those silos that you would need to build middleware for, or whatever else you would. And therefore, I think that this conscience about data is also very helpful. Just to close down the argument in that sense, it is the new gold, although employees don't necessarily think of it. But the moment they start using personal efficiency tools, they will understand that, for example, how I take notes in a meeting will affect the capability of a co-pilot of building some kind of documentation for that. Or basically doing things like setting up meetings or whatever automatic thing you want the thing to do, the co-pilot. So I think that the awareness for data governance, data standards itself will be broader, so that you will overcome this problem faster. That's how I thinking in my head, to not focus so much into trying to educate everyone, because that will be important. We tried that for a long time, and you get to steps, right? But the very slow steps is a steep challenge that you have, and just getting it in front of your face that things are not working because of the bad quality of the data that you have will force you to change that.
Yeah, I agree. I actually observed the same with our organization. We built this knowledge base tool that helps us understand what kind of projects do we do for which clients, which problems do we solve all around the world, and so on and so on. But the moment we kicked it off, it was a breakthrough moment for a lot of our teammates to actually put more attention into what information do we feed about our projects into the system, because some of them were outdated, incomplete, and so on. But now they saw exactly what's coming out of the system. How do people from different departments perceive the data they are putting in, and so on. So it's true. It's so in a sense, what you say is AI will help to solve the problem it's somehow created of having the data unstructured and sometimes unusable. I would love to take one more question from our audience, and then we'll slowly drift towards finishing on more like personal notes. But Bart asked, about your hypothesis experimentation stack, and if I understand correctly, maybe that's about the tools, the processes, the methodology you use, how to ensure that the experiments have a clear goal and clear success criteria in the end, and are not blurred, not biased.
That is an ongoing, let's say, learning process in that sense, to find the proper way of doing that. What we started with is, as I was mentioning in the beginning, right, the innovation management at Otto Group has evolved throughout time. We had the company builder, we had different things. And to some extent, sometime it was just about knowledge exchange, getting external input, and for example, in that area of external input, the only thing that we focus on is on basically innovation trends, where we define strategic innovation trends. And from those two, let's say it's mostly two innovation trends, then we basically allocate every initiative that is in there and try to assess through basically a business impact ratio. But that process is really, we need to learn it every time, because you get people on board to try to give you the let's say, evaluation for that, and it's very different depending on who you're talking to, right? So, and what we also focused on is on describing an innovation hypothesis that basically give us a framework on what type of innovation we want to focus on. Because what we are not likely to do is all of those transformative things, because that is external and it's very difficult to bring into the company without a clear use case and a clear, let's say, perspective, where you have to learn so much. It's more of the adjacent innovation, right? Let's say Horizon 1 and Horizon 2 innovations, where you move. And there is where we basically focus on and try to define the hypothesis over that. When we try to track success on experimentation, all of this, we basically let the teams define their own KPIs and try to, let's say, coach them or consult them into maybe using a different type of KPI or this or that. But you need to look at it on the individual impact that it might have on a single company. So you cannot have a broadened experimentation across the group because we have very different capabilities. So there are companies in our group that are still printing a catalog. And if I come with them with a size and fit recommendation, the impact that it might have on their business today is very low as to, let's say, reduce printing costs. So therefore that cannot have the same hypothesis or let's say success KPI in general. But
are you sorry.
Yeah. But in general, when we look at it, we try to basically allocate to see how much of our budget or our time and everything we allocate on those strategic fields, how many innovation initiatives are there, what is their status, where basically they're implemented into the regular team. So you generally, it's also you learn, you still have to learn on how to build your experiments and how to you basically shove them into the regular organization so that they get worked on there. So productizing things is also a challenge. And that is also a KPI that I have, right? So how many actual projects are we able to productize? That is something, but it's a fluid process. I have never found, let's say, this framework that helps me to evaluate everything properly because setups change, money changes, crises come and go. So it's very volatile to have a clear methodology in place that works.
I agree. I think there are two comments I'll make. Like one is, I wanted to ask you if you're more of like a leading indicator or lagging indicator guy, but I think you answered, it depends on the context, depends on the place in the value creation chain and so on. I can wholeheartedly agree. I think sometimes we stick too long to leading indicators because it's still like experimenting, brainstorming and stuff, but then sometimes introducing very rigid lagging indicators can kill creativity and can just make an idea that fulfills the criteria and fulfills the KPIs, but doesn't really bring a breakthrough, right? So that's an issue.
I think that so especially for corporate decision making is still a big issue, right? So decision processes take a long time, and that support teams into making decision faster is also helpful despite the experimentation. So if you ignore completely what you're doing, so content wise or technological wise, the move to decision and not to postpone decision because of things that might come along the way is very helpful and to try to drive this. But there again, it's also very different from company to company, right? From aspect to aspect.
Of course. I think the breakthrough moment in my career as a manager, also introducing innovation and change into organizations, was when one of my senior leaders started asking a question, like whatever idea you come up, whatever idea you want to change, you want to introduce, ask yourself a question. Does it bring us closer to realizing our strategy? Does it bring us closer to the success we somehow described for a whole company? And with this question, you can empower people much more because you make sure you're aligned in the big picture, and then you can give them freedom on choosing their own methods, KPIs, measures, and tools.
But for that, you need that vision, that strategy. Right?
Exactly.
Sometimes that is also very, let's say, it's also a fluidity there that you're not necessarily sure on what we're focusing today, right? Survival
True. One of my friends commented that he's a professional service designer consultant working with clients to help them design new services, and he said, for majority of my clients, it's I come in, we do some workshop, and I leave because I can't design a new service if they don't have a strategy, and their strategy is usually, like just grow 5% year to year, don't lose too much stock value, and that's it. But it's not enough. It's not enough to be innovative.
It comes to the point that I said in the beginning, right? Business strategy, if you If I don't take that into account, or if I don't know if there's lack of, then innovation won't have the impact that you need, because you don't know what you're working for or against for, right? And also innovation from a technical perspective, we tend to still have those companies or organizations where IT is just a cost, right? They are somewhere there in the back of the office, and they take too much time. Whenever I have requests, it takes like a year to fulfill. So that is still very ingrained in certain areas of companies, right? Not necessarily Otto Group. I think we had done a lot to change that. However, I know companies also in startups, we started growing, and then immediately it's a very human thing to have your own area and to start to focus on that and just blame the others on why you're not reaching your goals. But oftentimes it's just this construct of vision and strategy and goals on top to say, okay, what we need to do to basically get there, and what can we add to the value to get there. And that is also a process that is necessary in innovation. So when you were talking about mindset and culture and all of that, to understand that there is a necessity also of purpose for people, not only to be motivated to work, but also to understand what they should be working on to deliver value, it's necessary.
Sure. Yeah, true. It put lots of responsibility on the leadership in organizations, right? It's obvious. And my last question, because I think we're running out of time, I wouldn't like to steal too much of your Friday, but I have to ask you, head of innovation management, there is no course in college. Well, there is a course in college innovation management.
I think today they are.
I took it 15 years ago. It was a blast. It was fun. We learned about James Dyson, but I guess today everything looks differently. And James Dyson was developing his product for 20 years. I guess there's different dynamics today. So I want to ask you, how does one become head of innovation? How does one tie their career to innovation management professionally?
I think it has, so you introduced me as a product manager. I think it has a lot to do with that, right? Mm-hmm. Because, this is really just my personal perspective. It's not necessarily right, but it applies to me. I think that product, when I started working in digital companies, I had no clue about product management or software development whatsoever, right? I studied law, so everything else, all of that I was a consumer, and I didn't understand any of it. I managed to start to learn how to build my own computer around that time, but generally I think that product enables you to try to understand on how to focus on customer problems and how to solve them, and then also how to make to make it financially worthwhile to solve certain problems. And if you go through that process of learning, of questioning, and all of that, then immediately you need to think about what is up in the future. I think it's a very natural thing that if you take your job as a product manager serious, you will get there to try to understand, will my customers still want to interact with me the same way they are doing it today? So the leap to innovation there is not as big as you would imagine. Right. So, and if you think also of how business has developed over the last 20 years, is basically this view on startups as innovation also helps a lot. Mm-hmm. If you have in a startup, then you immediately are predestined to be innovative in corporates or in incumbents. But I think it's a very general perspective, right? Of saying you as a startup, you risk more, you learn more, you move faster, you fail faster. So that allows you to bring this innovation or this innovation spirit that is necessary for big ships to actually also try to move faster, right? And at the end of the day, it's always this question of what are my capabilities today? What my capabilities need to be so that if market changes happen in the future, I can steer this ship in a more efficient, less painful way as it is today, right? So that every disruption that appears doesn't seem as threat or as big as a threat as they might do today. So I think this is basically the leap that I would say. And at the end of the day, in an ideal company, I wouldn't be there, right? There would not be the need of my team, of me. Every product team would have the responsibility of cover that part as part of their daily job.
Sure, it's nicely said. I will not wish you that for obvious reasons.
It's okay. I hopefully I can go in pension next some years, man. Job done. That's cool.
Yeah, cool. True. Thanks. And I think we can stop here. Our today's discussion.
Sure.
It was a pleasure to meet you again. I feel like we could, this talk more and more. There's still some topics we haven't started. I will ask you about again about the recommendation for Guatemalan restaurant in Berlin, because I will surely go for Weihnachtsmarkt this year. So I want to know where to go for tamales, where to take my wife for tamales.
Tamales is very good. So there is this place called Trespassers in Febeliner Straße. It's in Mitte. So, south of Senefelder Platz, all of that area there is Febeliner Straße. That's Trespassers. They really, it's really. So I've had you also had tamales in Guatemala, but it's really, so I went there for my wife. I didn't know they existed. My wife took me there as a surprise. I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, for my birthday, and it was like a blast, right? So it was having tamales.
Will you cook tamales for Christmas this year?
I'm really not good at it. So I think that before I do some big mistakes, I wouldn't actually know really good if I wouldn't risk it. I'd rather go for Trespassers then again, or take the family to Guatemala to have there some with my family there.
Okay, maybe we'll meet in Trespassers one day.
Cool, that would be great.
Thank you, JJ. Really, it was a blast again. I'm looking forward to meeting you again sometime. Good luck in all your endeavors, and have a great weekend.
You too. It was a blast. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.